Hey YouTube, it's your beekeeper here. We're going to do a video today on trying to remove this dent out of this gas tank. I watched a few videos on YouTube about people using small inner tubes to pull dents out of fuel tanks. And while I do believe that's still a valid process, I think it is something that actually can work. It didn't work in my case, and we'll talk about it here in just a minute, and I'll show you why. So if you're encountering something like this in your own motorcycle tank, or fuel tank, it's probably not going to work. You may recognize this tank as the one off the Yamasaw, which if you're new to the channel, that's a home-built, completely scratch-built, home-built band mill slash sawmill apparatus. During the course of unloading the sawmill out of the back of my pickup, it tipped over and it hit the top of the bed of my old Dodge truck, and it just caved in the side of this tank. And the problem being is it probably reduced the fuel capacity on that side of the tank by 40 or 50%. I mean, it's a significant dent. You can see it there. It just squidged it. And there was a slight dent there to begin with, which probably would have worked with an inner tube. But the problem is when it tipped over, it not only crushed the original dent and more, but you'll see on the front of the tank, it dented it right at where at the crease. And it's not really a crease, but it's right at the fold of the tank there. Yeah, so it's just probably one of the stronger, if not the strongest parts of the tank to try to pull something out of. I thought I'd give it a whirl anyway. I have these two inner tubes. I'm just trying to kind of size them out. I did watch some different videos of people where they would cut the tube to make it not round, I guess, to make it tubular, and then pinch off the edges, and that would probably have not worked either. I mean, truth be told, I think this dent's in a spot. You'll see that secondary dent there on the front of the tank closest to you, what you're watching, and that's just in a spot that's not gonna, it's just not gonna cooperate. But I'll show you what I did. I'll show you what my process is, and I'll show you the fails. I've always said before, good, bad, or otherwise. I'll let you know what I've got. And then it'll be in the next video after this. I'll show you what I did to correct the problem. So first thing I did was I removed the petcocks. I removed the fuel cap. I'm feeding this galvanized wire. This is galvanized plumber's wire. And it couldn't have happened in a more inconvenient spot on this tank, because this tank is bifurcated by that was a big word, huh? I'm an idiot. The spine of the frame there, right? It's got that tunnel on the inside, and the gas cap is offset. So it's offset onto the other side of the tank, and it would have been really, really easy to access the inside of the tank if the dent were on the other side. But in my case here, it's not, of course. So that entire tunnel is, for the most part, blocking everything I'm trying to get done here. And there's very, very little room, maybe a ½ inch between the top of that tunnel, and then there's a sleeve on the inside of that filler tube. I'm just examining my options there. I don't have a lot of space. But I was trying to see if I could pull it out, but it's welded in there. It's like crimp welded in there. But we get her in there. We'll just give it a minute here to work. As I was saying, the old dent reduced some of the fuel capacity, and I could live with that. But the problem is that the new dent and the increased damage to the old dent knocked out a really probably 40 or 50% of that fuel capacity. And when you want to run a piece of equipment for an extended amount of time and it's under load the entire time, there you go, a little WD-40 will grease it up in there. You need as much fuel capacity as possible. So we're getting it. We're working it. About 90 degrees outside. You don't normally see me in short pants. I'm not a big short pants wearer. My little chicken legs like to be behind some long pants, but it's like 95 degrees, and it's hot inside of my shop here. Yeah, so we got the old short pants going. That's pretty awesome. Lots of WD, because I figured WD's pretty inert. It'll mix with gas down the road. It won't cause any problems, as opposed to using soap and water, which soap and water would work pretty well as well. And I think if this were a more manageable dent, I think that lubrication on the tube would actually benefit the process. Where did we go? That's where I went there. Buddy, There you are. Come on, back in frame. What was he going for? I don't know what I was going for there. So I had the wire tied around the core because my thinking was, because I didn't have any room to fill the inner tube through the filler neck, the fuel filler neck, because there just wasn't enough space between the top of that tunnel and then that sleeve that's on the filler tube. So my intention was to get it to come out of the petcock hole here, and it was a pretty it was difficult, but it happens. Spoiler alert. And I'm trying really, really hard not to tear the inner tube. I'm using the dullest standard screwdriver I can find to just kind of manipulate the tube around in there to get the core. You don't want to pull too hard on the wire because you don't want to break the wire. You don't want to have the wire slip off the tube, and you certainly don't want to damage the inner tube. Yeah, because boy, if it got stuck in there, I'd be, well, you'll see part 2. Hang around for part 2 of this video. And you'll see what I had to do to get the failed process here. But there, I got the core close enough. Look at it. Look at it. It's like giving birth. Good grief. And then I just put a cable on the end of the core there, so I wouldn't lose it if it decided to slide back in. There it is. I got it through. Let's get the wire off. And I'll bring you back to normal speed when I start inflating it up. I don't know what I'm doing, right? I've never done this before. Like I said, I watched a few videos, and I'm just trying to position the tube so there are no pinches in it. Again, being very careful, and it's hard to tell with the video sped up, but I really am being careful to not either damage that petcock hole, because I don't want to do that, and I certainly don't want to create any damage to the inner tube. And I'm just using vice grips there to hold it in place. Very little pressure on there. So I'll put the core back in to the stem there. And we'll get you back to normal speed here in just a second. Now I realize that I'm grinding all the paint into my dirty workbench. So we'll let you go on the normal speed here, and we'll see what kind of interesting commentary I may or may not have here. Yeah, eye protection, that's always good. So what I'm going to do here is I've kind of resolved myself to having to cut the tank open. I was really trying to avoid, I'm not worried about perfect bodywork on this thing. I didn't want to cut this thin sheet metal open, hammer it all back into place, and then weld the patch back on, which is quite honestly what I ended up doing, and you'll see it in the next video. But I'm sitting here going, well, what's the safest way to cut this tank open? I know there's fuel in here. Recently, there's been fuel in here, and it still smells like fuel. And I'm going to get in here with a grinder. Certainly don't need the plasma cutter. I don't need that big of a kerf. But I wanted to use just to take a little sniff and go, yep, smells like Teen Spirit. And I don't really want the big kerf like a plasma cutter. That just is way overkill. So I just end up taking a cutoff wheel. But first, let's test to see if we have any flammable gases that remain in the tank. You know, what better way to check for flammable gases than boom, right? Huh? Remember that one? Nothing. So we're safe. Oh yeah, until you drop that tank. Stay tuned for the next one where I cut this patch out, work the metal back in to pretty close to being decent looking. And we get a coat of paint in it. Thanks for watching. Gotta go, gotta run. See ya!